Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, agents. I am Matty Carl, and we are going to continue on to part 2 of this Let's Talk, which is partly responding to Natchai's comments, the Ubisoft manager's post on the Ubisoft forums in regard to a person who said that the loot that they got for doing a 3-phase, 5-directive heroic mission was not adequate for them, and they were angry and salty about it, and they posted, and Natchai responded, and this is part 2 of that response. If you want to see part 1, just head on back to my channel and you should see it. The link will be in the description to the post once again so you can follow along. But before we begin tonight, July 12th, today is the 11th, but tonight, July 12th, there is a new patch and it will be dropping, and we will see a few sad things change in this patch, and while they are nerfs, they shouldn't be nerfs, because things like the G36 having the damage reduced is actually just returning it to where it should have been before 1.3 dropped. So all of us wanting to have that not change, it's going to change. Thus, we will all be mortal once again and do the same amount of damage. But fear not! I may have found a few replacement guns that can compete with the current damage output of the G36 that you may want to end up using, and I will have that video for you tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. So really quickly, I want to go ahead and break down tonight's fixes and get into the rest of Natchai's comments. So the blue division tech popping out of those boxes in the DZ, those are fixed. The PP19 recalibration issue is fixed, so you won't have to spend money on that issue. Then Showstopper and Sentry's Call have been fixed, so you can no longer put marks on people with the Showstopper because it is an automatic shotgun and not a semi-automatic, and the Sentry's Call marks only work with semi-automatic guns. Showstopper recalibration talent has been fixed. Alpha Bridge Gloves fixed. Map not loading. Oh my gosh, thank goodness. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this. This has been fixed. So no more map glitches. The HVT issue with respawning has been fixed. Talent stacking and consumable stacking has been fixed for the Reclaimer and Alpha Bridge sets, and the recalibration talent swap fixed. Those are the major fixes for tonight's patch, and let's reiterate, there are no exploits in this game currently identified by Ubisoft. Zero, none, zip, zilch. Alright. Business end is done. Now on to the fun. We left off after the 4th paragraph on the Dark Zone, so if you are joining us just now and you want to kind of pick that up, let's go ahead and we will pick that up. So let's get into Natchai's comments. Regarding people saying that they ignore most incursions or UG HVTs because it doesn't reward the set they want. To my knowledge, UG and HVTs do have a chance to drop all sets, and as I said, this might be upped a bit more in the future. As for incursions, I'll forward on this sentiment, but instead of having all gear sets in there unweighed, I think it would be more reasonable solution would be to offer weighted tiers. So the main sets for the incursion on place 1, the other incursion sets on place 2, and the rest of the sets on place 3, for instance. In any case, this is up to our dev team to decide. I think, however, in the way you'll be more inclined to try all of them if the chance for getting your gear set of choice has a better chance to drop. If it's an incursion specific one, so a better chance of Striker Sentry on Clear Sky Dragon's Nest than currently, but still not equal to the ones that have been created for them. So I get what Natchai is saying, but I disagree. Underground, the percentage of drops for all gear is super low. You'll barely ever see it. You have a better chance of getting the Showstopper twice in a Heroic Lexington than a Sentry's gear once in the Underground mission. HVTs, don't even get me started. HVT bosses have a slight chance at dropping all gear sets. I've gotten lots of alternative gear. I mean, by lots, not a whole lot. Like when we did Eagle Squad, that actually gave a good idea as to what was being dropped because I got a Tactician's gear and 3 Lone Star pieces. So Lone Star is the #1 thing you're going to get no matter what. It's just going to keep dropping. HVTs are just, it's basically if you need Lone Star, that's what they got. I've gotten, all of this, and it's just the way it is. It's as if it's massive made HVTs for solo players and then made it possible or impossible for them to do them solo. It's like, because Lone Star set, that's kind of the solo thing for 1.2. They kind of put it out there, but you can't do the HVT solo. So why else would Lone Star gear be the only reward you get from these HVTs? And on the second part, why is it that it's always electronics that rolls on it? Why? Yeah, My Mountie squad has rolled HVTs on our mains and alts, and every single Lone Star backpack was rolled with some garbage electronics roll. It's as if you want to punish players for doing the HVTs by handing out garbage they can't use, and you know what they can't use it. Massive is like the old woman on the street with a nice house handing out dental floss on Halloween because she thinks she knows what you want better than you did. You know, what she needs to be are the guys I have near me who hand out candy to the kids and booze to the parents. Big shout out to those guys, because I make sure to go by there every year dressed up so I can get a glass of whiskey while trick-or-treating. It makes Halloween more bearable for me. It's only first because the woman handing out money is giving away spare change and not dollar bills. Yeah. I live in a neighborhood where people do Halloween awesome. You know, if you don't live in one of these neighborhoods, just go find one of these neighborhoods. I mean, there are people that hand out just absolutely ridiculous stuff. Money, candy, booze, food, like whatever you want. It's a safe neighborhood that I live in, and it's pretty awesome, and I enjoy going trick-or-treating with my kids because people know that if you have kids, you need something too, because it's very unbearable just to walk door to door and see all these cute kids running around in Halloween. Anyways, that's Halloween. This is moving on. We're moving on. As for solo players, this is a conundrum, and I'm not really in a position to post any definitive information regarding it. In my personal opinion, though, with the changes I've discussed already, I think solo players should be quite pleased. However, do I think we'll see the day where you can solo incursions at the highest difficulty? No, to my knowledge, they're created as group content and should be that. I agree. If there was a way for solo players to get the highest gear available, they would just do that and no one would do anything else. There wouldn't be any reason to group. Everyone is always looking for the fastest way to get loot possible. It's why glitches are so popular. It's too bad there aren't any in the game. Don't use any of the mobile cover glitches to go through the wall in Dragon's Nest or get good gear. By the way, Ubisoft has said there are no current exploits in the game, so feel free to do anything that you would consider a glitch or an exploit, since it's not a glitch or an exploit according to Ubisoft. Have at it. Please go. Do those things. Get your gear while you can before Ubisoft identifies it. Honestly, on their page it says no exploits are in the game as of July 11th, which is today. To give you some insights into me personally and where I'm coming from with my opinions, I played a lot of World of Warcraft, which I still find to be one of the better loot-driven games out there. Mind you, I stopped after Lich King, and I have no idea what happened to their loot system since. But so, to give you an idea, I was brought up on the notion that no, not everyone is going to have the best gear. You'll need to work really hard to get it, and come to the next expansion raid, it's highly likely the gear you will have will not be BIS, which I think is like best in system or best in class anymore, and you'll need to work again. It's also taught me patience. Not only did we have to work in big groups, we did it with the knowledge that our raid run could last for 4 hours and yield nothing personally. The chance to get the drop I wanted was also small, even when I knew that the loot table for a specific boss was, and even when it did drop, we still had to roll decide who got that specific piece. All of that is after a lot of hours of grinding for materials for potions, food, etc. that were essential to the raid. On top of that, you wanted PvP specific sets for the PvP aspect of the game, which could only be gained by playing PvP. Okay, let me stop there and talk personally as someone who has played a lot of WoW, and I mean a lot. I was the guy who, if you didn't want to play the game, you paid me, so I would play the game for you and get you to level 60, and then I'd give you the characters. So I know a lot about DSP and showing up early to get a group in the A group. I knew you needed alts to run multiple times to get more, dragon skill points. The DSP, that's what DSP is, for all you kids that don't know. DSP was dragon skill points, which you earned by showing up to the raids, and they calculated on forums. It was a big mess. And you spent those to actually get the gear. So if somebody had 13 and you had 12, you weren't getting gear that week. So our guild was the biggest on Tichondrius, and when I sold my account at the end of the game, I have full raid gear. The problem here with the comparison is that if you wanted to make a game like WoW, then make a game like WoW, but you didn't. You made a game where loot drives everything, and you get the highest tier loot chance from everything. WoW is a mission story-based game, and the mission and story-based, there was always something to do, whether it was like epic loot stories or something like that, where you had to go through this epic chain of loot, stories and missions and stuff just to get that loot. The difference in loot between WoW and The Division is that WoW didn't have over 19,000 possible iterations of every piece of gear. The other difference, WoW gear was available to everyone. You shared the loot. You don't share anything but the boss drops in The Division, and the ratio of usable gear to garbage loot is like 1 in 100. Yeah, I made that number up, but in the 100 drops, I feel you get about one piece of gear that is actually better than your character. And in WoW, when you got a loot drop, it was either good for your character or you passed on it and let somebody else have it, but you didn't take it, and there wasn't anything to do with it once you did other than sell it. So you could put it on, it was bind on equip or bind on loot or whatever it was, so other people couldn't get that loot outside of that instance. But there's no auction house in Division. There's nothing like that. You get the loot that you get, and that's it. There's no other way. There's no other alternative to get loot. That's it. The things they try to do to manipulate you into thinking that you can use the garbage is the recalibration station. But in actuality, with armor caps, there is only one good roll per slot. If you roll a backpack that has electronics and armor and you want skill power to be the main perk or the major attribute, you're screwed. That gear piece isn't usable because you must be above all else to get anywhere in this game have 53, 54 armor and a certain level of toughness, or you simply cannot compete with other players, and the level of difficulty in this game is drastically increased. I've carried people in heroics before to get them leveled quickly. They die fast, they die easy, they die to everything. I have on my best gear pieces 259,000 toughness, and I die to 2 or 3 sniper bullets. If you have overheal, I die to 3. The game has over 100,000 ways to get to the end, but only one path that will allow you to complete the journey, and that's the fundamental flaw of this game. You have so many options, but if you fail at choosing the right one, you just aren't able to compete in the game at the highest level. You can't do incursions on heroic, you can't do heroic incursions, you can't do heroic underground, and you sure as hell cannot do the dark zone with people who have figured all this stuff out. To be honest, the builds I showed you, my tank and my pseudo-tactician's build, these are all number builds that you can use with any gear pieces to help you survive. That was my point of these builds. Some people missed it because they were like, oh, you're using garbage pieces, the blind set, lone star, all that stuff. No. The point of those builds was to help you fix the numbers so that you could get a toughness that you could survive with in the dark zone with DPS and skill power, so that you weren't just getting trounced. The gear set perks that you have on it, those can come later. You can use those, anytime you want. You don't need those to just be there. These are really things that can help you out and get you going. That's just the way it is. You need the numbers first, the gear perks second. And once you do that, you can figure it out and get there on the end. It's all a numbers game first, and then gear sets will come in second. I know people often put gear sets first, but really the numbers are what's going to help you survive. Toughness, DPS, skill power, all that stuff is going to help you survive, and the perks are just going to help you get to that point. So now let's go ahead and finish this up and get out of here. I know that we're probably going to run over time, but I just want to get through this and get all of this out there. So I'm going to finish reading his last paragraph, and then I'll address it, and we'll go from there. So while I get your frustration and anger, I personally, on a personal level, do not fully agree with them. I personally feel the game has been very rewarding for the following reasons. PvP, PvE gear is more or less the same. Yes, certain sets are better for PvP, but you can still get these in PvE. You're not forced to PvP to get them. Your gear stays valid for a good amount of time, considering all the gear sets can now be gotten at the top gear score. You'll have to regrind the known content if there's a new gear score cap, sure, but that shouldn't be a problem. You always get loot for you personally. There's no chance that you won't come out of the content without any loot, whether it is what you're after or not. Preparation time for content is minimal. There's no need for you to craft potions, food, feasts, or gather the materials you need to make them. I'll address these final comments in line. Now, the part of the game about this game being rewarded, I highly disagree. This game is not rewarding. A reward is something you get for completing an objective. The game is plentiful in terms of loot, but it's not rewarding. I don't feel rewarded for the time I put into a heroic mission and get a 229 weapon off a boss or a 268 gear piece that has poorly rolled stats. That's not a reward, that's just loot. And as I stay above, the ratio feels more like being rewarded one time out of 100. So there's not really a feeling of being rewarded and that the game's rewarded. It's giving you loot that you can't use, and sure, you can turn that into credits, but honestly, I'd rather have a set piece that I can use than anything else. So moving on, PvP and PvE gear being the same. No, not even close. You can build a set to be good in PvP or build a set that is good in PvE, but they are not the same. Not even close. In fact, guns aren't even the same. If the gear sets were the same, they would work in PvP the same way they work in PvE. But in PvP, the way combat works is entirely different. It is not the same as PvE, so the gear sets are not the same. You can build a PvE or a PvP, but you cannot build something that works in both. Let's talk Tanktician, which a lot of people run because of sticky bombs and being good in the dark zone and being generally good for PvP. But you take that set into PvE and you get horribly burned because of sticky bombs, and being in PvE, a sniper rifle does more damage than a sticky bomb. Sticky bombs don't even hurt level 35 enemies. So yes, there is a fine line, but you can't find a build and do something that works in both. In Massive, you saw to this. You made the nerf to Sentry's Call and the Stalker combination because you saw that this set was too versatile, it was too powerful for both PvE and PvP, and you nerfed it to make sure that people had to continue to work to try and get something. Now, your gear staying valid for a while, sure, I can agree with that, but in WoW again, gear stayed valid for a lot longer because they didn't raise the cap for a very long time. You were level 60 for the longest time and your gear always stayed valid. In the Division, your gear the game hasn't been out for more than 6 months, and there's already a gear score increase. So there's not a level increase, but there's a gear score increase, which means you have to go ahead and it invalidates your entire gear set. That you just invalidated everybody's hard work that they just worked for. And that's one of the things that pissed me off about Destiny, is every time they raised the gear score, all of the stuff that you had was worthless. Like, you had to regrind everything over again, and it made all of the work that you did up until then feel useless. And wow, at least the time you spent in raids, it felt like, no matter what they did until they raised it to 70, 80, and 90, that everything that you did was worth it. That was worth the time. And in WoW, at least when, you moved the level gear up, that I was able to go do that stuff in the current gear I had, and I was adequately geared to get the next stuff up. So you can't really say that, your gear in the Division is valid for a while, because it's not valid for a while compared to other games that you're comparing it to, like World of Warcraft. And even Destiny, your gear was much more valid longer. So and you can always get loot. Well, yeah, you can always get loot. But like I said above, I'd rather get credits I can use than a gun or a gear set that I can't. Luckily, I try and run with people who haven't gotten a chance to get a ton of gear, so I've helped my team level up. There aren't too many of us below 245 now, and we share gear. We look at the loot drops, everybody goes through and says what they have, and if somebody's building a certain set of gear and they need a piece, we give that to them. It's very much the motto of our group and how our group works. And believe me, I've given away Deadeye, I've given away Reclaimer and stuff that I wanted, but these people who aren't geared like I am, who don't have 250,000 toughness, they need the gear too. And if you play with me on a regular basis, you'll find that I am very generous with the gear I have. Nobody else really is, because they all need the loot. A lot of people need the loot. People don't play as much as I do. I'm happy to give the loot to them so that when they do get it, they can get geared up and they don't feel like what they just did was a super waste. Now, I'll give you an example. My buddy Ryan, who you've seen on here for a while, he has been looking for a usable backpack for months, and he did an HVT last week when it was the backpack, and he got screwed. It was a Lone Star backpack with electronics and no armor, and he got screwed over. And again this week, same thing, and almost the same exact stats. It's ridiculous that he has to go through this week in and week out, and he's discouraged by it, and I am personally looking for a backpack for him anytime I get a backpack. Last night, finally, after 2 months of looking, I finally found a backpack that he can use, and he used it, and he was in awe because it was a backpack that he could use, and that was like the most amazing thing that has happened this week. So finally, and we'll be done. Prep time. The prep time is the same. Sure, you don't need to make potions, but you do need to change your gear to make sure you have the right equipment, abilities, and perks to survive, because without the right know-how, you cannot win. You have to run the incursions and the heroics several times before you understand what works and what doesn't. Try running heroic underground with 3 directives without doing any prep first. Just let people run what they want to run and see if you can beat it. If you can, congrats, you're a stud. But it takes coordination and teamwork to make it through. Any of the incursions or underground heroics do this. The heroic missions, it's a step down from level 34s, so it's not that hard to run through with a skill group, and there's no prep time to doing a heroic mission. But, once again, you aren't being rewarded as well as if you were doing a heroic activity, because consistency massive, it's not your strong suit. So you need to make sure that you're running a heroic mission, you're doing level 33s, you're getting rewarded with a level 33 set of gear, which is like 204 weapons, 214 gear pieces if you get them, and there's a chance that you might get a 240 or 268. It's very small, but that's just what it is, and it's very discouraging to get weapons that in all honesty, 204 and 229, it's not that much different, and I'll go into that in another video, because really the difference between 204 and 229, the damage is the same. The only difference is that you get like a 1% boost on all the perks. That's it. That's really all it is. So don't throw away your 204s because you have a 229 that looks like it is better. It's not. So that's been my time and my opinion on this. I honestly feel there is a disconnect about his comments that makes it hard to understand how much he plays the game. I'm sure he's played a lot, but it's hard to be objective when your career is on the line with what you say. So he may say one thing, but it could be the opposite if he wasn't working there. He is paid by Ubisoft to defend the game and be a champion of it. It's why I have the freedom to tell you the truth. I'm not sponsored by or endorsed by Ubisoft or Massive, which gives me gives you the ability to believe what I'm saying is the truth. And it's what I believe. Once I join an Ubisoft program, go to E3 with them, I'm obligated to continue to be a supporter and only give criticism in a positive way. I need to be positive to maintain that relationship with them, and until they send me over a offer of, supporting them and being on board with them, I will continue to bring you the truth. It depends on whether or not I'm going to sell out. That's really what it is. If I'm a sellout, you can come over here and just grind my gears about that. But, if they want to pay me to do this, that's fine, but I highly doubt it because I've been so critical of it. But I hope you found this informative and at least somewhat interesting. If you did, please help us out by dropping a like on this video and consider subscribing for more content like this. This is by far one of those posts that shows that some of the people, even though they're paid by Ubisoft and are communicating our interest to the dev team outside the resources like Reddit and the official forums, it's nice to have someone who's going to the dev team and saying, hey, this is what the feedback is right now, so let's go ahead and try to fix some of this, or do what you can. So I enjoy and love The Division, but every time they take one step forward, the next instance is to take 3 steps back, and it's very discouraging. And I know a lot of people quit, I know a lot of people come back, I know a lot of people quit, and it's just going to continue to be that cycle, and we need to stick together as a community. Hopefully we'll make it better and we'll get going again. So thank you for watching. For all of us here at the Division Let's Talk series, I'm Mounty Curl, and we'll see you in the underground. Agent out.